inspiring you to set the marketplace ablaze in partnership with an awesome and limitless God. This is the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast, and this isn't business as usual. Here's your host and Chief Fire Igniter, Shay Bynes.
Welcome back to the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. This is your host, Shay Bynes, and our goal here is to inspire you to operate your business completely yielded and in partnership with our awesome and limitless God. Today's guest is Christia Donaldson. She is the founder and CEO of Thank God It's Natural, a manufacturer of natural hair and skincare products. She's also the author of the book entitled This Is Only a Test: What Breast Cancer Taught Me About Faith, Love, Hair, and Business. Now, I really enjoyed this conversation with Christia about her journey of going from someone who felt like she had it all together and can handle things on her own, I got this, to transitioning to really surrendering her life and her business to God, truly yielding to Him and inviting His presence and His wisdom into the daily operations of her business. And I believe you will be blessed by her testimony as well. But before we get started, I want to make sure that you know all about our Firestarter School. Firestarter School walks you through key foundations and practical applications that will help you to confidently partner with God at greater levels in your business. It's all about positioning you to experience His best and have a greater kingdom impact in the marketplace. It's an MP3 audio course available via mobile app, so I guess you can say that it's like having me as a mentor in your pocket. And I truly believe that if you are a listener of this podcast and enjoy what you're hearing and learning, you are going to want to grab Firestarter School. And guess what? Lifetime access to the course is available at the price of your choice. And yes, you heard that correctly. So head over to our website at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com/Firestarter School and get all the details. And one of the things we have going on special this week is that those who purchase Firestarter School will also get a 50% off coupon for our Grace Over Grind e-course. So this is a great week to get your hands on our Firestarter School, again, at the price of your own choice. Now let's get started with today's conversation with Christia Donaldson. Listen in and enjoy. Christia Donaldson, how are you?
I'm great, Shay. How are you today?
I am doing great. Listen, this is the first time I have had a natural hair care company represented on the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. So this is good. I love talking to a different type of business owner. So you are the CEO and founder of Thank God It's Natural.
Yes, I am. And I'm glad to be here today. So thank you for allowing me to be the first natural hair care.
I love it. And I am natural hair. So I'm
got to send you products afterwards.
Listen, I'm trying to try them. I already went to the website to look up the store locator to see if I could find some nearby.
I'm after this.
Okay, thank you. So I'm just glad that you're here because I want to talk about what it's been like for you in your business, in your life, really, of doing this entrepreneurial crazy journey with God. And before we hit record, you were sharing some things with me that I so could resonate with, because you were like, look, from age 0 to 35, I didn't have too much trauma going on. Things were going well. I go to Harvard, So obviously you had good grades. You were excelling well. You were doing the things. Life's good. And you were kind of like, I got this. And I know that because that's how I used to be too. So that's why I said I could relate. But something happened in your life that shifted everything. And I believe, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but that was probably also the catalyst for in business for you to do it in a way that was completely different. So first start by sharing a little bit more about like what your business does. And then let's just get right into when God changed everything.
Amazing. So we are a manufacturer of textured hair care products for kinky, curly, and wavy hair. We make shampoos, conditioners, deep conditioners, oils. And, I started out like most Black women who are in this space, mixing in my kitchen, selling out the trunk of my car. And by the grace of God, an opportunity came where we got the opportunity to do business in Target. And so today we're in over 10,000 stores, including Ulta, Target, Walmart, CVS, Walgreens, and what have you.
Nice.
But,
and how long ago was this? When did you start?
So the company itself, I wrote a book called Thank God I'm Natural in 2009. And I launched the brand in 2013, meaning the hair care items. And then we got into national retail in 2015.
Nice.
And so, God has clearly been with me on this journey. And it has been very challenging and difficult from an entrepreneurial perspective. But like when I was starting out, and we had talked before the call, like I said, 0 to like 35 was pretty cool. Minus the fact that like I said, my mom died about 60 days before my freshman year at Harvard. And so I knew God's presence like covered me during that existence, because I could have had a nervous breakdown in school. Like I didn't go to therapy, I was away from my family for the first time in my life. And like, God just covered me. But I was like, okay, thank you, God, for covering me. And not to say that once I came to grips with that situation, because it's still 20 years coming to grips with that situation, but I just felt like, safe in God's arms. But it really wasn't until I got breast cancer at the age of 35 for the first time where I really realized, and like I said, I was in the thick of my business. We had just launched in Target probably 9 months before nationwide. And I get breast cancer 9 months later. And I'm like, snap, how am I going to run this company? How is this company going to survive? And I'm laying on my couch, nauseous, dealing with chemotherapy. And by the way, I run a hair care company and I have no eyebrows, no hair, and I'm wearing a wig in a movement that had became very much like, pro-natural, anti-relaxer, anti-everything. And so, I dealt with this diagnosis, chemotherapy, radiation, lumpectomy, kids, with like having my eggs frozen and stuff. And when I rose from that situation, it was this type of thing where I looked back, and during this time where I was completely out of commission, our sales doubled and the number of stores we got into quadrupled. So like we were in Target, but during this time we got into Whole Foods, we got into CVS, Rite Aid, Sally Beauty. And I was like, oh snap, that was all God and not, because like my hands were not on the wheel.
This is you and a team. So your team's all full force. Like what was kind of going on? Like, so you literally were doing nothing, but
like basically. And so the thing about it is, my team prior to that, and my team, my warehouse was like a girl who was like a single mom of 3 kids who didn't go to college.
Right.
She was holding it down. And like my assistant who lived in Wisconsin, who was not there. And literally, I had been such a stickler and a perfectionist for so many years that these people who worked with me kind of picked up where I left off, and we didn't miss a beat. And so the company survived. Not only did it survive, but it thrived. And I came out of that experience like, okay, telling people my testimony, like, okay, God, that was pretty amazing. So I get back on my feet, running the company, whatever. And I had found out I had early stage breast cancer. It was like easy to deal with. So then like 2 years later, my breast cancer comes back and it wants to cut up an act of food. And in this situation, like I did not know what was going to happen. This is the life-changing thing. And so I was on various medications that they were using to try to like get this situation under control. And it's funny because this is the testimony of all testimonies. And I haven't really talked about this about the second time around, but they're trying to get it under control. And they have this new medication where it's like what they call a miracle drug. And it's funny because I had radiation to kind of make some things simmer down. And then I started taking this medication, but it didn't work. Then they put me on another medication and it didn't work. And one day I go into the doctor's office and, this is like 18 months later, but they're telling me the medication's not working, but I look completely normal. Like the way I look now, completely normal, and I'm getting stronger and stronger.
Wow.
Right? It came back. It like affected me physically in a way where it's like I couldn't walk and stuff. Like I had a hard time walking. But the medication's not working, but I'm getting better and better. So they're like, what are you doing? Like what are you doing? And so what I realized, and even talking about this, is the power of God and why he put me in this situation. I was mad when the medication was not working. But why the medication wasn't working is because the second time around, God wanted my testimony to be, it wasn't the medication that healed you. It was faith in your prayers that did. And so now every day I read that passage in the Bible about the woman with the issue of blood for 12 years. And she's in the crowd and she touches Jesus's cloak or what have you. He turns around, looks for her, and he's like, tells her to come forward. And she's scared and whatever. She tells the story that I touched you. And he's like, you're healed because of your faith. And so that is what he wanted my story to be. He didn't want it to be, I got breast cancer again, and they gave me immunotherapy, or they gave me Ibrance, and now I'm cancer free. He wanted it to be, you're cancer free because you believe, your faith was immovable. So how does that tie back to me being an entrepreneur? I'm running this company, I'm smart, if you will, but the level of complexity has just gotten beyond, I can do it, but I realize I need God's help. I'm at a stage where I'm like, who do I hire? Do we take this opportunity? How do we approach this? And
this was your first business, right? This was your first.
Yeah, this is my first and only business.
Okay.
And to even hear his voice even more, and something I didn't used to do before, I realized I have to get really quiet. So one day a week, I shut down social media, and kind of adopting what the Jewish tradition of the Sabbath is, where I shut down social media and I just try to use that as a quiet day. So even if I'm doing little household chores, playing gospel, even if I talk to my family on the phone, I'm trying to really say this is a day where I disconnect. It's about connecting with, family and friends, but really trying to hear God's voice and the power that has come from that. You got to shut up. You know what I'm saying? I don't have the answers. And so that's a long way of saying girl, I'm here. This thing, the opportunities that be falling in my lap are beyond crazy.
Have you ever had, I want to hear some of your favorite stories about those times where the fruit of your quiet space, where because you took the time to be quiet, that either an idea showed up, an answer to a problem happened, or, a new, something sparked that had a impact in your business or with someone that you work with in business. Tell me your favorite one or two stories that come up.
So I just opened my phone because literally I try to capture at the end of not every time, but every quiet period. Say I do it on, Friday to Saturday. There was a time where every time at 5 or 6 o'clock when I end, the last gospel song would be on point, if you will, whether it was about my health in terms of a message coming through that way. But in terms of me just getting the word, I'm like I said, I'm just going into my phone because I said, I have so many things, but I think the main thing is just realizing he will provide me with whatever it is I need to get to the next level. And it's funny because the last time I even went to church, or maybe last Sunday online, the guy was talking about understanding your position and preparing for your position. Because sometimes I sit in a position and I'm comfortable. I'm okay, even though things are hard, I've got this far, I can chill. And God is no, you got so much more work to do. Because sometimes we can think, okay, I've accomplished this, I can just coast. And God is no, I need you to do more. I need you to step up and live at your full potential, because you're I'm ridiculously, in some people's minds, successful. But right. God is this is just the beginning. You haven't even really seen what I can do with you. And so I think that's some of the things that come out of my quiet time, is that there's so much more you can do. And part of the reason why I think I sometimes, not to say limit myself, is because I'm scared. Because I'm if this is this hard, how much more could he have me do? Because I'm scared about where I am today.
What's been some of the biggest challenges for you as you've been growing business?
I think some of the biggest challenges are people. People in the sense like you have to have a great team, and team determines everything. And for me, particularly as a Black owned business, like I'm ruthless about excellence. And so, I have to make sure, I always hire people for smarts, not necessarily for color, but I do like want a diverse team that reflects the population that we serve. But I'm ruthless about excellence. And so God has to work with me sometimes on grace, meaning like, sometimes I just want things to be ready, that person to be ready to go. And God is like, I've put them here for a reason, meaning like you need to like, there's excellence in whatever. They may be excellent in like 60%, but that 40%, it's your job or your company's job to be a training ground for them to get to their next level. So that kind of frustrates me, but God is teaching me, grace. And I have to pray on it sometimes. Like I have a little prayer list, which includes some of my employees. And just like, I try not to make decisions about employees like the way I used to, where it was more like logic. I try to really, at this point in my career, make them based on what is the word that I'm getting from God. Like before I didn't even think about God. I read my Bible in the morning and the rest of the day was the rest of the day. But I really do try to incorporate his guidance and voice if I get a word into everything that I do. And then one other thing I think I've learned being in business this many years, and somebody gave me this Bible verse, it's Philippians 4:6. It's like, be anxious for nothing, but by prayer, thanksgiving, and supplication, like make your request known to God. Yeah. And with a business, there are so many things that can go wrong, so many things you can worry about. And I think that Bible verse has also given me new perspective of, you just can't worry about it. You got to put it in God's hands and know that he wants what's the best for you.
Yeah, so good. So now when you come back, so you have gone through therapy with breast cancer, you're like, you come back, I'm talking about the first round, and your business has increased substantially, but you were down for the count. When you came back in, and now you're faced with like, I don't know how different the business felt based off of that expansion, but now you're walking into like a new scenario with your business with, on the other side of going through chemotherapy. Like, what was that like for you? What was that walk like for you to like re-engage, stay in faith, stay hopeful, stay faithful, and deal with the reality of all the stuff that comes in the process of expansion of a business?
I think for me, when I came back the first time, I was on shaky ground. And I think a lot of cancer survivors, especially from reading about breast cancer survivors, it's like you're done, but like that early period, like they say the first 5 years is like you're not in the clear until the first 5 years. And so you're like on shaky ground. And so I came back, had all this opportunity, but I was a workaholic before the first diagnosis. And so I was like really scared about throwing myself back into the business. And so, like I said, even though we had all of this great expansion and I could point to God for that, I think I still it wasn't that I didn't trust God, but I still was not there spiritually. Like I was still a baby Christian, if you will, in the sense of like, God's got this. Like I was still like, okay, I had breast cancer. I'm fragile. Like I've got to take, instead of asking God, like saying, he did it then, he go do it now. It wasn't like I had that same confidence. I was still kind of here. And then the second time, I was a little shaky ground for a minute, but then it was like, let's go. Like, let's go. Like, God's got this. He done did it before. He about to do it again. We ain't stopping. Let's keep this thing moving. And so, like I said, the first time, I never felt like I was on, like, I felt like I wasn't on steady ground. But that had to do with my own, it's not that I didn't have faith, but it was just like, what is one of those Bible verses? Kind of like you can't trust what you see in the world. Like you have to look at the world through your spiritual eyes and not your natural eyes. And I was not there yet. I was more, as my sister would say, I don't care what the doctor says. You know, some of those gospel songs, I don't care what the
right.
So back then I was still like, okay, I had this type of breast cancer. I was still very analytical, still looking at the world through my natural eyes. And I think now I'm much more willing to look at things through a spiritual realm. And here's my other favorite Bible verse now. It's like, they're like, God is not a man that he should lie, or the son of man that he should repent. If he speaks, will he not act? If he promises, he shall fulfill. And so I'm much more aware that if he said it, it shall come to pass. And I was not there 5 years ago.
Did you make that shift in the midst of going through breast cancer the second time? Is that when the shift happened and it was just almost like a click? Like sometimes you just get a revelation of your heart of truth and then you just turn it around. Did that happen in the midst of recovering on the second round? Like what was going on in life at the point that you can recall there was like a shift, like in your mind or shift in your heart on this thing?
It's like, and you'll look at some people who've been through what I've been through, and they're just like, you never thought it was going to kill you. Like, but like, again, in the natural, it looks like this thing could kill me. But in the spiritual, it's like God has given you every assurance. Every time I got quiet, it would be a gospel song that come on. And the end of the song would be like, my mama had terminal cancer and 20 years ago, and she's sitting in the heart. It would always be something crazy like that.
The testimony shared at the end.
The funny thing is, it's funny that we're talking today, which is, I think it's today, June 11th.
It is.
Okay, so today's June 11th. So you're like, where did this shift come from? There would be so many things that would come to me, like miracle signs and wonders. So last year, exactly almost a year today, I went to this service, this 12-hour prayer service, but I didn't go for all 12 hours. I went for 1 hour. It's actually happening tomorrow. And this one lady came up to me in the audience, and I'm in an audience of like 2,000 people, and she's like a prayer warrior or whatever. She's walking around and she just touched me with this rag, and she was like, you shall be healed. Acts 19, 11, and 12. And I'm like, what? And so like, I just look, I look normal, whatever. And the Bible verse was Acts 19, 11 through 12. And it was like, God has done extraordinary things through Paul's, that even aprons and handkerchiefs were taken to the sick, and they were healed, and the evil spirits fled them. So she sees me in this audience of 2,000 people. And it's just like, you shall be, I'm like, and it would be stuff like that over and over again. And you're like, that's in the spiritual realm. And like I said, in the natural realm, your doctor is like, this medication ain't working. In the spiritual realm, all these messages you're being bombarded with. And then it's just like a year later, a month later, your doctors are like, what are you doing? Because this don't make no sense.
Yes. So good. So good. Okay. So once you've made that shift and you're like, okay, well, God's got really good ideas too. Like I don't like, if I involve him in my business, and like I'm involving him in my life in other ways, I can involve him in my business in other ways. I can spend time that's quiet with him and just have him to lead and guide me in business. Even from an operational standpoint, have you ever had an instance where there's a blueprint of the world that teaches that you're supposed to be doing something a certain way in order to grow the type of business you have, but in the midst of it, God gives you strategy or wisdom on top of what the world's got to offer you that leads you just into breakthrough in business?
So it's funny because like I'm a lawyer by training, and my head of marketing, she used to be in operations. She's an engineer, but she's over marketing. And one day we were on a call, we were going back and forth with Target, and the buyer was basically like, I ain't taking no new SKUs, not this year. And, my head of marketing and sales, it's like, she said she wasn't taking any new SKUs. I was like, I know what she said, but I know what I heard. Meaning like, you're again listening in the natural. She said she wasn't taking no new SKUs, but in the spiritual realm, that's not what I heard. Right. And so that's an example of where what you heard and what you heard from God are two totally different things.
Yes.
And it's so funny because that was like maybe 2 months ago during COVID. And then my head of marketing said today, the buyer just emailed me and said, you better be ready for, more doors or whatever. I hope your inventory is ready for more doors. So the point is, she was saying one thing, and I was like, that's not what I'm hearing from God right now. Like, I heard what she said, but let me tell you what God is telling me. And so
good.
it's the natural versus the spiritual eyes, or the natural versus spiritual ears, and just being in tune and trusting that voice, and being okay with hearing things that don't necessarily logically line up with whatever the data says or the metric says or whatever a person is saying. And so I'm much more comfortable with saying 2 plus 2 may not be 4 today. It may be 8. God may say, I can take this and this and give you, kind of like the feeding of the 5,000. Yeah,
that's right.
That type of situation.
Yeah. So good. So good. What's the size of your team now?
Right now, I just did the numbers. It's about 19 people.
Okay. All in Chicago there with you?
No, some people are actually in other places. Like maybe 5 people are in like other cities, but it's like about 14 of us in the city.
Awesome. So what does it look like from a leadership perspective, where you're just like, okay, I really see God on strategy. I see God on how to walk this thing out. I mean, you may have a team of some believers, some not, who knows, but like, how do you create that culture as a leader, as we're willing to go even against, like, if God said it, we're going for it. I don't know if your team's ever even been challenged in that way with decisions and stuff like that, but how do you create that kind of culture as a leader, where that's kind of embraced, regardless of what the faith is of those you work with?
I think that's just kind of like the fact that we are where we are, I think is pretty miraculous. Meaning, like, I'm 100% owner. We've gotten so far without like any type of outside investment, and just walking that walk where you're like you said, this is what God is telling me. Like, I'm in the midst of making another hire. She's super expensive. And I'm like, I could kind of do this. I want her, but I could kind of save money. And God is like, pull trigger, bring her on. Because this is to get to the next level. And it's like, you're like, oh, this is so expensive. It's going to be so hard. And he's just like, do it. And I'm like, okay.
Yes, I do know what you're saying. So what's the biggest stretch for you now? Like, how is God really stretching you? You did say you have grown in grace with people. How else is God stretching you in this time, in this space of business that you're in right now?
I think for me, what I need to work on, and where I think he's stretching me, is to really use the platform to really speak about him. Because it's funny, and you'll listen to other Christian entrepreneurs. I think when I first started the business, how would I put it? It was called Thank God It's Natural. It's still called Thank God It's Natural. And I always felt like, I like the name, I love the name, but I don't want to really push the faith thing, because I'm not perfect, if you will. Like, I don't want to be out there like in the church or with the brand, and then I mess up some way, somehow. And I think God has gotten me to the point where he's like, you got to let that go. Like, this is what you were put here to do. Like, the shampoos and conditioners are cool, but like literally this platform is so much bigger than that. And so I think that's kind of like from a leadership standpoint, where he wants me to be more comfortable about being open about my faith, if you will.
Yes.
About that. Like, because you even look at Chick-fil-A and it's like, they are unapologetically like, we serve the Lord. Sundays is not going to be no Chick-fil-A.
Right.
Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, because I never wanted to be like turning people off, where it's like, okay, I'm a business and I may have Christians and I may have non-Christians or whatever. And it was just like, he's kind of like, you got to let that go. Like, this is what it is. It's natural. And so there's a Christian bent to it. And I think from a leadership standpoint, I'm growing into understanding that this is kind of a faith-based business. Whereas before I would have been like, but that's between me and God, not between me and my customers and, a thing for public display type of thing.
Yeah, I totally get that. I really do. And I think there's a lot of people who really walk through that stretch, because it doesn't mean like, okay, well, I've got to start putting scriptures on the bottom of all my bottles and all that. So, I mean, that's what the Lord gets you to do. It's just, but how do I show up, and how do I show up and let my light shine before people and it points to you? Sometimes just the mere testimony. I think about your story, Christia, and just the faithfulness of God in the midst of you've got a health crisis essentially, and the way you just see God's provision show up. It's like there's aspects of your testimony, whether it's in healing, whether it's in just how his provision in ways, and in the huge ways and the small ways, that just releasing that story to people points to the goodness of God, and it's not even preachy. It's the power of your testimony. It's the power of a story. And I think a lot of us as kingdom entrepreneurs, it's like whether the product is, the product isn't, our products aren't Christian, right? But we are kingdom people. And so we carry with us, very nature of God, and that's to point people to him. And so I'm excited for you as you're being stretched in this way. I mean, ultimately it's his platform. He'll get to do with it whatever he wants.
Exactly. I'm just along for the ride. That's what I'm learning.
That's what I say a lot. That's so good. That's so good. Okay. So before I let you go, is there anything just burning that you wanted to share that I didn't ask you about, but you thought was really important to share with an audience of people who are really doing business and partnership with God?
I think like I said, I'm just happy to be here. The main thing is, just put him first. For more about my story, I just wrote a book about this called "This Is Only a Test: What Breast Cancer Taught Me About Faith, Love, Hair, and Business." And it delves into this topic more. But other than that, that's pretty much it.
Very good. So where do they go to get more information on your products, as well as, shout out your books or however they get connected?
Awesome. So right now you can find us, like I said, at Ulta or Target. Our Instagram for the company is TGI Natural, and my Instagram is TGIN CEO.
Very good. And so people buy your products online also, or do they need to purchase in store only?
No, you can buy on Amazon, either our website at Thank God It's Natural or tginatural.com.
Very good. Well, thanks for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Shay. This was fantastic.
Thanks for joining us on the Kingdom Driven Entrepreneur Podcast. If you've enjoyed what you've heard today, we encourage you to subscribe and spread the word. And don't forget, you can gain access to even more resources, plus a thriving community of fire starters by visiting our website at kingdomdrivenentrepreneur.com.